Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Let's talk about navigating success. That's the topic for today's video. That is the playlist that I have. If you enjoy this video, if you do end up getting anything from this, there's a playlist for you with many more like this. So, navigating success. The topic of this video is about learning in your 20s, right? And so when I was thinking back, I'm in my late 20s now, and closer to the end part of, well, that's what late 20s mean. I'm at the end part of my 20s, and I'm reflecting back on, you know, what I had to learn to get to the point that I'm at now, right? I talked about in a previous video, progress being invisible until it's not. There's a lot of work that goes into uh, the success that you want to build that has nothing um, that other people can see. There's no outward indicator that people will be able to point to and say, hey, that's working, until after a certain threshold. And that's usually after the 80% that you've put in. So you need a motor, you need a lot of different things. That's not what this video is about. But in keeping with the theme of this, looking back at my 20s, I had to do a lot of learning, but I also had to do a lot of unlearning. And I think that's equally as valuable. I think they happen simultaneously, but I think they have different priorities, whether you look at the first half of your 20s versus the second half. So if you're in your first half of your 20s, if you graduate from high school and you're pushing yourself and you're trying to be make something of yourself, be successful, I think that it's a canon event. Canon being something that has to happen. A reference to anime. Anime shows, when they come out, they reference canon. Is it referencing the book? Is it how it was written, or is this an adaptation that has its own elements of creativity that veers from what was known, right? So I say it's a canon event in referring to that this is something that has to happen, right? It's inevitable. And I think if you're in your 20s, if you left high school, you're in your 20s, and you were pursuing greatness, pursuing success, you will reach a wall and realize a lot of the things that you thought were going to happen may very well happen, but it didn't happen in the time that you thought it would. Or it didn't happen at all, and you're still working towards it, and you realize it takes longer than you previously had thought that it would. But in doing so, in getting to that path, there's things in high school you have to unlearn. There's things with your friends that you had certain beliefs of that you had to unlearn, remove. And I think that's equally as important. Okay. First half of your 20s, it's all about trying new things, going out there, try this job, try that activity, see what it is you like. Whether you're in university or not, you need to be experimenting. Buy courses, read different books, do many different things, go to places that you're not supposed to be in. One of the things my dad had had made me do, I say made, but we ended up going downtown, and there was this nice hotel, very nice hotel. And we lived in the city, so one, we never needed to actually take that hotel, but a very expensive hotel, and we dressed really well. And my dad brought me in there, and we sat by the bar, and we sat down in the lobby, we moved around, right? And it was a very uncomfortable feeling. Why? Because, well, we don't have a place in the hotel, right? We didn't book a hotel or anything like that. But the message that my dad had told me at that point was being comfortable. You belong in these spaces, right? So there's a lot of great information that I was able to get from when I was younger. And sometimes you have to go there before you get there, right? Go there before you get there. But with a lot of the things that we've had from when we were younger, friends where we've bonded over tests, things like that, where I didn't do well, they didn't do well, so it's a joke, so it's fine. Realizing those things are not okay. Unlearn those things, right? Bonding over negativity. These are all the things that we have to unlearn. Asking for help, right? Being willing to ask for help. That's a tough one for me. To realize, okay, you know what? I'm trying to navigate this. Reach out to different people. Let different people know what your circumstance is, and say, hey, you know what? I'm in good spirits, but I'm looking towards doing this. I'm not quite sure how it goes. I'm just putting that out there in case you know. And what you'd find is people, especially if you're not somebody who does something how do I say this? Especially if you're somebody who's not one particular way, you build up enough equity in the other category, right? So that sounds confusing, but what I mean by that is this. If you're somebody that doesn't ask for help, you never ask for help, you're building up equity where people want to help. People would love to have the opportunity. So sometimes the best way to give is to receive. So at that point in time, you need to unlearn this idea that you need to do everything by yourself. And that idea has probably stemmed from something from when you were younger where you felt that if things weren't done, you had to do it. If you want things done yourself, as we've been told, you have to do it yourself. When in actuality, many of the greatest accomplishments in life relied on other people and their expertise. And it's in that collaboration that, something that you would have never have thought would have gone that way, goes that way because of the input of many different people. And again, with people feeling like their input is valued, that they're sharing this creation along with you. And that doesn't happen unless we unlearn some of the things that we've been taught, that we've taken for granted. So I know in my early 20s, I've tried many different things, and I attribute that to a lot to my upbringing. I give myself a lot of credit for it. I actually give Gary Vaynerchuk some credit when it comes to this, because at the time, I believe 21, he had posted a video talking about this isn't the time for you to go safe. This isn't the time for you to impress your parents and do all those other things. He said, this is the time where you can, what did he say? He said, eat out a box of pizzas, eat frozen pizza, something to that effect. This is not the time to go safe, right? You have enough time when you're older. And so that's what I did. I dropped out of school. I ended up working as a property manager, managed like 5 properties, started my media consultancy. I've done so many different things, not safe at all. Try explaining that to your mom who's in education, for 25 plus years that you're dropping out of school to pursue these other things, right? So not easy, but tried all these different things. And then what happens is, or what happened in my life is that in your later 20s, you have a pretty good sense of what it is you like, what it is you don't like. And if you've done things for quite some time at this point, you've done things for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you have interests that have lasted maybe a decade, things dating back from when you're 15, started in high school. And now you've seen trends or the market really take shape. You've seen it go through transformations. And now that's expertise that you have. That's information that you have that can be useful. And so now that you have that, you really want to double down on the skills that you have. And now that you have a certain level of awareness, but you have perspective. And this is where life changes, I find, at 25. 25, you realize, oh, shoot, I'm not as young as I once was. I'm starting to get older is the feeling at 25, I believe. And I think at that point, it gives you enough perspective to step back and look at life. You can see what you did 5 years ago and 10 years ago, and see how some of those things 10 years ago played out, 10 years later, 7 years later. See how certain moments, certain people that you had met had impacted the direction of your life. And you've also seen that if you've put in the work, you start to see the benefit, I'd say at the 7-year mark, 8-year mark, of things that you did 7-10 years ago, a decade ago, playing out now. And so you get that sense at 25 or so, if you're aware that what I do today will directly impact where I am at 30, where I am at 35 or 32 or so forth. And so the things that you learn early, things that you like by 25, you really want to double down on those things. Go learn courses, go do that. But you you want to apply more to the things that you want to unlearn. You realize your bad characteristics. I did not want to work at Walmart, at McDonald's, anything like that. I would rather die. Literally. Coming out of high school, if I had to do something like that, I was with my girlfriend at the time. I said, you know what? Right now we could use this. We could pay this school. We could do this stuff. I ended up taking a job at Walmart. It was like 6 months. I ended up getting another job working as a sales associate for a like small time tech company, whatever. Big time tech company, but small in where I was at. But in that 6 months, like my whole priorities changed, right? I had to unlearn this idea that I was too good for this, right? That this is just where I'm at now and not where I'm going to be in the future. And so I ended up finally buttoning up my shirt. I tried to reject it. There's so many different ways my body was rejecting this, but I had to unlearn that behavior, right? Still keep myself believing that there's greater things for me, but this is just part of that process. And so I had to unlearn these things that I've held in high school, you know, the athlete, like, oh, too cool for this, too cool for that. That is just one of those things. So I guess the advice that I'm giving you as far as success is realize in your 20s, in your 30s, or whatever phase you are, what you do now affects the next 7 years of your life. Where you are at 32 directly is impacted by what you do today. And if you are in your 20s, that is what I'm able to speak to because that's kind of where I'm at now. I can't really speak to the 30s. I look forward to it when the time comes. But if you are in your 20s or graduating high school or moving forth, there is a wall that you will reach post high school if you're moving towards success with a certain level of vigor, and you won't achieve it most likely in the time period that you thought you would. And even if you do, you probably realize that's not the final goal. Something else will come about. But if you can just focus on the fact that, okay, before 25, I should just really try as many things as I can. And in that process, gain some perspective on what it is I like, the proficiencies that I have, the competencies that I have. And then in that process, if you can remain self-aware, realize the things that kind of stopped you, the things that values that you hold true, near and dear, that may not be true, that may not be helping or serving you in the way to your vision and purpose. And in your later 20s, from 25 to 30, yes, continue to double down on the learning, but more so, focus on the unlearning. Focus on unlearning the bad behaviors, unlearning the values or the sayings or the affirmations, whatever it is that you've taken to heart. Dispel those, and that will be the thing that I think would be most effective for you by the time you hit your 30s. You'll know what you want to do. You have your competencies down pat. You've dealt with the trauma or anything that's kind of haunted you or things that were holding you back. And now you're ready to take on your 30s with a certain level. You know, you're good. You're in a good spot, right? And you're going to look around and you're going to realize, I feel good about where I'm at. I may not be exactly where I thought I was going to be, but I feel good about what I'm coming out of my 20s with, right? And I think that'll do you good. And that's where I'm at too. That's where I'm at with myself. So I'm not speaking about anything that I don't particularly know. So hopefully that is useful to you. This is a video in my playlist, Navigating Success. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like. But more importantly, if you can, give it a comment. Let me know what in here, if any, is something that you found value or took value in. I would greatly appreciate it. And if you do like it, go ahead and subscribe. My name is Roydell Clarke, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.